that's basic. I'm just like avoiding that, but I'm just moving level 2. This looks like what else can we do in order to make our speeches look compelling. Let's go to adjudication. This is something that's a part of debating. Debating acts as a sport. It's a community, and everything is competitive. Judges score the teams, teams score the judges if the judge has given them a favorable verdict. But by favorable, I don't mean like given you a win, but perhaps like a feedback that you all really liked, or a feedback that you can implement in your further rounds. That is something that acts as the competitive nature of the sport. Adjudication also, it's adjudication in formal word of judge. Adjudicator is a judge, and everything can be a starter. This looks like if you are in this community, you can either start by being a judge or you can either start being a speaker. There is no entry level barrier for being a judge. This doesn't look like the judges don't have any experience. You have all kinds of judges. You have a judge who's just started judging, and you also have judges who are extremely experienced, and they can give you a lot more like compelling feedback. So adjudication can be like something that you can possibly do, and it's like a really, really good thing as well. Why should you choose judging, and why do people go to judging? Is one, judging allows you to just engage in a very different manner. So if you're judging a debate and if you want to speak tomorrow, it is really something that you can possibly work on in the very first. Sorry. The second thing that I was saying is on adjudication. So a lot of people just judge 1 week and then the next week they start like speaking. So if you're like a third speaker, if you're like a second speaker, it might really help you to just look at the loopholes. Like, what is a judge trying to do? They're trying to find loopholes, or they're trying to fix that fallacy that you must have missed on. So as a second speaker, you might want to fix that because you've judged and you have understood what should be added here. So I think everybody can be a judge and everybody can be a speaker as well. I was told to add this because I wanted to make this an interesting thing as well. So yes, everybody can be a judge. Coming to the first speaker, I want to divide like the roles and responsibilities of first speaker, second speaker, third speaker like this. I'm going to say something which is basic so that you all like really relate with me. Then I'm going to introduce the concept so that it becomes like a really engaging thing for you. And then I'm going to move on to a little bit of exercise and practice. I'm going to be ensuring that this entire session is prompt based, which means I give you something and you have to speak out. That's it. Great. Can somebody tell me the roles and responsibilities of a prime minister? Like, what does this person do? It's basically a first speaker from prompt. Yes, Poorna, and then Sanvi.
The first speaker, they basically need to set up the basis of the argument that the team will further continue. So they'd introduce what the team is going to talk about. They'd characterize. They'd basically set the basis and set an introduction.
Yes, you're correct, Sanvi.
Yes. So the first speaker or the prime minister will open the debate and set a context or a base, define the key terms, and identify the burden of the side.
Yes, absolutely. Wait, there's somebody else. Yes, Diksha. Okay, never mind. Great.
Repeat what you said. Can you repeat what you said? What was your question?
Wait, I couldn't get you, Prabjot. What you can do is like type Diksha.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you repeat what question you asked?
I was asking, what does the prime minister do?
Okay.
Okay. Somebody raised their hand, but I like forgot. But anyway, let's go to the basic thing. We all agree that prime minister does 3 things. First is they define the motion. If the motion is this house would ban zoos, you would define what a zoo is and you would define what a ban is. And it really allows you to not squirrel the debate. What is squirreling? Squirreling is when you narrow down the scope of the debate. So let's say if the motion is this house would ban, this house would shoot. I'll just write it down so that everybody is on the same page. This house would shoot. Now the proposition is smart enough. They just did this. They defined shoot as uh, camera shooting, and opposition was very confused. What did proposition do? Proposition actually limited the scope of the debate by just defining something according to their convenience. However, that was untrue, which means that the definition of shooting is not camera shooting, it's actually hunting somebody or just like shooting or killing somebody. So that's like a much more desirable or a reasonable way of defining something. You can't just possibly squirrel something or just say that, oh, this is something that should be ours because I defined it like the way it is. So your word or your world doesn't work like that. The second thing is set up the case. This looks like you present what you want to say. This looks like whatever you've discussed with your team, you start putting it out down. Third is present arguments. You finally present your argument. So what is the difference between set up the case and presenting arguments look like? In setting up the case, you just characterize something or you just frame something. I will discuss this later in the slide as well, but I want you to just like get an idea of this. The second thing is on presenting arguments. Whatever your team has thought of, you just start pouring it in. That's it. This is what you all know. Now let's understand how can you actually implement it and how can you possibly make your first speeches look better. There are two things here. First is the difference between characterization and framing. I will write it down. These are two like debate words that people use regularly and people are often confused on what is the meaning of this word. Let me write it down for you. Characterize and frame. Framework. Characterize is the definition part. Like if I'm characterizing something, which means I'm defining something. So this house with ban zoos, I want to characterize it by defining what ban is and what zoos is. That's the first layer. Framework is, so imagine a photo frame. A photo frame is responsible for outlining something. So a framework might look like just creating a world building. So let's say the motion is about this house with bamboos. I think I'm taking that repetitive example for a while, but yes, the framework would look like identifying a problem that you want to solve. So this would possibly look like just creating a world where you create a picture in front of a judge. This would look like, uh, mm, let's say I live in a world where animals are getting brutalized or animals are getting killed on a regular level, and you could just like add a little bit of PETA facts just so that your framework can look compelling. So a framework rather involves like a world building where you're trying to let the judge imagine what your side of the house looks like, but also you are just giving them some problem that your side wants to solve. So framework is just like a larger idea of putting something in a frame. That's it. So that everybody knows that you're within the structure, within the outline. Characterization is defining something. So everything happens strategically. Now let's discuss strategy. A lot of the debaters just present arguments for the sake of it, and that's not true. And that wouldn't work in long term, which means the most important thing for you as a person is to be strategic. I mean, every other player or every other person who's into a competitive sport, just like debating, they have to be extremely strategic. Just pushing out arguments or just mentioning arguments wouldn't make you a winner. What really makes you a winner is strategically pinpointing something. So let's say if you're a person who knows a lot, and if there is a person who strategically know where to push the matter and how to put the matter, I think that person is much more smarter as opposed to a person who just knows facts. I mean, everybody can know fact. What is the difference between a normal person and then you as a debater? Strategy is the most important thing that we have to figure out. What am I really talking about in strategy? The second thing is preemption. A lot of the people, when they actually try to be prime ministers in an Asian parliament debate, just say, maybe I think I can present my side of the arguments and I can be done. That's not how it works. You oftentimes have to predict what your opposition has to say. So that is what you call preempt. Preemption is predicting your opposition. Preemption is predicting your opposition.
Excuse me,
As a,
ma'am.
yeah,
Ma'am, can you again define characterization once?
characterization is definition. Framework is just providing an outline or providing like a world building for your judge to sort of imagine that this is a problem. Does it
Okay,
make
ma'am.
sense?
Thank you.
Okay. Great. The second is on
Mom,
preemption.
could you please re-explain dumping matter?
Yes, I mean, I'm coming to that. I haven't really come to that yet. And I would like, it'll be lovely if you just like raise your hand as opposed to interrupting me in between. I really lost that track. But yeah, Shreya, I'll come back to you. Let me just like complete this side and I will pause for like 15-20 seconds so that you all get it. Okay, let's come to predicting opposition. After you are done with presenting your arguments, I think this is something that we deal with later. What you can opposition will say. I think it's just like a castle building. If your side has created a castle, and opposition will always try to break your castle down. And for that breaking to stop, you really need to predict what that castle will actually look like. And if you predict that, they wouldn't have a lot to actually destroy on your side because they're trying to save their own like piece, like own castle, etc. So yes, prediction really helps you because you can just address potential counter arguments from your side, from the other side, basically. Let's go to dumping matter. You all understood characterization, you all understood preemption. If you still didn't get it, I will pause in another 15 seconds. Not 15 seconds, 1 minute. Yes, what is dumping matter? So, the literal word of dump is to just throw. Matter is content. Here, matter is equal to argument. So, a prime minister or a first speaker has the responsibility of dump or throw as much argument as you possibly can. There is a very broad myth that works in debating that a first speaker can only give 2 to 3 arguments, rest all of the other people can just divide the arguments amongst themselves. I think that's like a myth. What you can really do is, how many arguments do you know? Put it out down, give a lot of reasons, and that's fine. And then you can move on to prediction of whatever your opposition will actually say. But yeah, dumping matter looks like throwing material which is from your side. But yes, throw material in a structured way. Do not just like throw material for the sake of it, and then it really overwhelms the other opponent as well. Opponent might be confused, opponent might not really know what you're trying to say at the end of the day, but a lot of judges might get really confused of what is the point of your argument. So always push something which is significant, which is much more relevant. This is what the strategic part of the first speakers look like. I will take down, so you can just like soak in the slide. But yes, Shreya.
Hey, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, this is Shreya, and I just wanted to clarify characterization. That characterization is basically, like refining your subtopics regarding the motion and like bringing out proofs and examples to like give a broader outline to like make everyone understand the motion and basically that, right?
Wait, I really didn't get you. What?
I'm trying to say that is characterization basically when you're trying to briefly explain the motion in
Yes.
by giving examples and proofs and bringing out subtopics to explain the motion properly.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. And my next doubt is that, ma'am, what is like counter framing in rebuttals?
Oh yeah, I will address that in leader of opposition. I'll come to that. CS.
Okay.
Yep. Sanvi, do you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask that. So we usually get a half an hour time period before the actual debate starts and between the topic we've been given, right? So, ma'am, how do we manage to do all these things in those 30 minutes of time without panicking?
I mean, that's a question that's difficult to answer. I mean, like this comes with practice. I mean, in 30 minutes, you have that's the beauty of time management, right? So it's just like a thing that you have to do over and over again in multiple tournaments to figure out what your strategy is. I mean, in like one tournament, you wouldn't decide that I'll be a first speaker forever. So you really need to like start practicing enough or start taking part in multiple competitions to know what your strengths in time management really looks like. But in like you have to strategize a lot with yourself as well. So I think one of the starters tip would be just spend a lot of time on framework, and just like let your teammates do a little bit of work on providing reasonings to your argument. Reasonings, just that you can create the heading of the argument, so your framework, characterization, and heading of the argument is ready. Rest, what is left is reasoning. Like within the leftover time, you can just push in reasoning in your arguments, and that's it.
Uh,
Okay, does that work, Sanu?
yes, thank you. I just
Okay.
wanted to ask one more thing. Uh,
Yes.
is it more important to focus on writing our own content, or is it more important to focus on the teamwork itself, like all the three people coordinating the content?
Again, time management. I think for the first like half, 15 minutes you can focus on team, and the other like last 10 minutes should be for your content.
Okay, thank you.
But since you're a first speaker, you can spend like 5 more minutes extra for your speech because you're going as the first speaker.
Okay.
Okay. Varandi.
Yes, ma'am, I have a doubt. You said that dumping matter could actually confuse the judges and they would not know what the main point of the speaker is. So, how do we overwhelm the opposition with the points and not cross that, confusing the judges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, dumping matter, uh, to an extent. So, don't push 5 arguments with multiple reasonings. Maybe stop it at 3. So, the maximum arguments a first speaker can do, and this is the maximum limit that I'm telling you, is 3. Minimum is 2. That's it. Oftentimes, people who are extremely like analytical in nature, they spend a lot of times only analyzing the first argument, and that is so like that's so broad that it covers the 7 minutes. So if you are that analytical, maybe you can spend like a lot more time on one argument. That's absolutely fine because you're just layering it down. And if you're like a really let's say you want to cover a lot of things, maybe you can just cover 2 to 3 arguments at max. Dumping matter to an extent might look like you're covering 5 to 6 arguments, and the opposition, neither the judge has any track of it.
Excuse me, ma'am, I have a doubt regarding this.
Oh yeah, I would have loved if you would have raised your hand. I would have come to you as well. Varney, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Krelly, that's your Gmail name.
No, yes, it's the
Yeah,
name is Akshay. Sorry.
very
I just wanted to ask, you talked about squirreling, the shoot example. Wouldn't you want to squirrel your argument so that it's easier for your team to kind of take the meaning that you're more comfortable with?
I mean, I would
In-
love to squirrel so like every other debater would, but it's not like the
Yeah.
most strategic thing. I mean, at best, in the first minute of the opposition, you would be getting called out and you would be losing that round. So would you mind losing that round and just like taking a squirrel, or would you just win the round and not squirrel? That's a trade-off that you make.
Okay.
Shmita?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm sorry for interrupting before. Yeah. So, ma'am, about the dumping matter, I just wanted to ask you, like, as you said, we can give as many arguments we want. So, like, is it basically we are providing subtopics into our speech? Like, if the motion, for example, is child malnutrition, so we can include in one argument what the UNICEF is doing for this, and we can then in the other argument we can give that why the economy is so low. That's why nobody's getting blah blah blah, and then the third argument could be that there is that child protection services are not enough, like something like that. So are these like the arguments that we have to give, and we can also call them as subtopics, like?
Yes. Yes, my answer is just yes. Uh, Great. That was not a question, but anyway, like, great effort. Going on to the next thing. I have taken an example that are generated via Chat GPT, and I don't think so. It's the best way in which you generate a speech, but I think he did the best job that he could. But yes, the way in which you can like incorporate all of these things in a prime minister's speeches, start with characterization and framing. It depends on you. Do you want to start with definition? Do it. If you want to start with a framework, that's more compelling. But if you want to skip framing and do it in the next file, that's absolutely fine with you. But yeah, do with anything. Just start with the definition, jump on framing, just start with the framing, jump on definition, depends on you. Here the example is animal testing. Okay, somebody is unmuted, but never mind. On definition, maybe you can start with this. We live in a world where during COVID, there were more than like 36 species of rats which were killed in a scientific lab because it was getting animally tested. And this is bad because you tend to just like violate animal rights and you tend to abhor animal cruelty. This is how maybe you can start your speech with, and then you can define what animal testing and what banning looks like and what legally prohibit looks like, and then you move on to your case split. What is a case split? A case split is division. Like the word itself says, case is a set of arguments. A set of arguments. Split is divide. So after definition and characterization, a lot of people just like jumble up things. That's not beneficial at all. What you can do in a case split is you can start with argument 1, impact evidence, argument 2, impact evidence, argument 3, impact evidence. That's a case split. Case split might also look like a roadmap. This is what a roadmap or a case split might look like. It's like an introduction to what your speech might really like look forward to. So as the Prime Minister, I will cover 3 things. First, what are the cons of animal testing? Second, why does it not benefit the pharmaceutical industry? Third, why it poses a lot of threats to multinational corporations or people who are within pharmaceutical industries. These are the 3 things that I made it up, although it wouldn't be correct. But yes, a case split might look like a roadmap. You're trying to provide an outline to the judge to figure out what they are trying to say or what you are trying to particularly say. So yes, that's a case split. Then you move to your argument 1. Then you move to your argument 2. Argument 2 is very interesting and it covers a strategic part. So let's say if you don't like something and you are for the motion, what you really need to do is provide an alternative. Let's say if you want to ban animal testing, what is an alternative? An alternative might really look like scientific experiments which do not involve the carcasses of animals. That's like a alternative that you can work with. So whenever you are banning or whenever you are against something, which also looks like disagreement, if you are on for, if you're on against, try to always give an alternative, because at the end of the day, you're solving problems. And if you can't possibly solve a problem by giving an alternative, I think you've just given an incomplete speech. Then you spend a little bit of time predicting what your opposition might come up with. Then you impact it and you conclude your speech. That's the way an ideal speech should work on. I will also write the case split and the format in the chat box. Characterize, frame, case split, argument 1, impact. Argument impact is the significance of that argument or what is the conclusion of that argument. Argument 3, yeah, whatever, impact, conclude, preempt, conclude. Yes, that's what an ideal PM speech might look like. Okay, I will take questions and you can look at the recap. I will just like cover up recap and then I'll take questions. I would like really love to. Start with the like characterization framework. Outline the structure for the government case. Tell the judge what you really want to cover. And one more thing, if you're promising 3 things to your judges and your audience, just do not chicken out. Which means that do not just like say only 2 things and just wrap up your speeches. If you were saying I want to prove 3 things, always prove 3 things, because you really want to earn credibility from your judges and audience, right? If you are not earning credibility from your judges or your audience, I think you're doing a bad job. Third thing is start with like your arguments, cover up ethical arguments. This looks like principles. If your entire motion has a principle, I'll just do a quick quiz. Only one question I have. This house would ban animal testing. Do you think it has any principle in it? Principle is something that's universal. Principle of human rights, principle of equality, principle of fairness, principle of justice. All of these are universal things. If you say this, it's very compelling. Yes, Abhishek.
Ma'am, I had a doubt. Ma'am, like we are given 30 minutes for all the decision and for the uh, for us debate to prepare for a speech. So after 30 minutes, are we allowed to see and speak, or we have not, or we don't have to see from a script? We have to see without seeing it.
You can refer to it. I mean, you don't have to look into it. You can just like refer to it and not just like stare into your sheet and never look at your judges. You can create a balance between the two, because you can't possibly just like learn a 7-minute speech. So you will have to refer it.
So, ma'am, like we are allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Let me just like clear the
Just a
recap
minute,
once,
just a minute,
and
like,
then I will
you
go with
think-
the questions. Okay. Never mind. And then in one of the arguments, you can discuss alternatives. I was discussing principles. Yes, in this motion, the principle is animal rights. Like why animal rights are important. That's a
Excuse
really
me?
bad spelling. Yes, Prabjot, I'll take that question in a little while. Just give me a little bit of time. The next thing is you can preempt and then you can conclude. That's it. That's the recap of your first speech. Now let's look at questions. Just raise your hand if you have any questions. I'll just take Prabjot because you were unmuted and you wanted to vocalize
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, just said a 7 minute speech, right? So, like we have three members in each team. So, like each of them have to give a different speech, or like what? Like 7 minutes will be divided in between of us, or what?
7 minute speech for every speaker. So 7 into 3, total of like 56 minutes of debate.
Okay. So it's just giving speech, or are we really going to debate, or is it just giving speeches?
I mean, yeah, you will debate, you will give a speech.
Okay.
This is help. Okay, yeah, great. Yes, Shreya.
Mom, I have a confusion again. As the previous doubt was taken, is it just all about giving speeches or like how to debate? I'm asking a very primitive doubt, but here I'm a little confused. How are we exactly going to like go against each other? Basically, like after the government is done speaking and then the POIs are taken, then the opposition is given a chance to speak. So does the debate end, or do we like have to reply to each other? What will happen exactly?
Oh yeah. So I'll just like tell you the chronology of the entire debate. Prime Minister goes first, gives a 7 minute speech. Leader of opposition, which is what I'm trying to cover here. Leader of opposition gives a 7 minute speech. Then comes a DLO, a DPM, which is a deputy prime minister, gives a 7 minute speech again. Then comes the DLO, gives a 7 minute speech again, and everybody's trying to rebut each other. Rebuttals is the most important thing because it's a strategic game. You will have to topple the castle of each other's town. Then comes the government whip, then comes the opposition whip, then comes the opposition reply, then comes the government reply. A debate lasts for 1 hour 15 minutes, and yeah, we are good to go. It's like a competitive game where you're trying to respond to each other and you're trying to figure out who's the winner.
Okay, got it. So, mom, I just wanted to confirm one more thing. I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time, but here, like, the what are the main components that are going to be in our speech? Like characterization, prep, mom, prep thing. Then my mechanization, I believe it's very important, and then rebuttals. So these three are like the most important, right? If we have these three included in our speech, we'll be good to go, right? I know other components should be there, but these three are major, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Anshika.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to just clarify that do we if in the 7 minute speech, like, do we have to like speak for 7 minutes straight, or if we like speak less than the time limit, will we get any negative marking?
No, this is a very popular question. You don't get penalized or negatively affected if you speak less or if you speak more. However, you get 7 minutes, 15 seconds. 15 seconds is the time where you have to wrap up. Like everything has to completely like finish off after like before 7 minutes, 15 seconds or at dot of 7 minutes, 15 seconds. If you speak beyond, there is no negative penalization, but whatever you speak, it goes in vain. I mean, none of the judges really write it down. None of the judges really care about it at all. So you're just like wasting your time speaking if nothing has been noted down by the judge. However, there is no negative penalization.
Okay, ma'am. And I also wanted to clarify more about reply speeches. Can you tell more about like what do we exactly have to say in the reply speeches?
If you allow me to go to that reply speak, I would love to. Aryan.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I need to ask, will we get any some amount of time after each speech is done, or is it just one after the other without any gaps, without any pauses?
So I wrote that answer in the chat box. It says 15 seconds. So let's say if my speech gets over at 7 minutes, and then the next speaker has to immediately start, they can take approximately 15 to 30 seconds to figure out what they want to say, and then they can start after that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm asking one more question, ma'am, but then it was the same as the last person who asked it out, the reply speeches.
I will cover that. Shireen.
I was wondering, like for example, if like if we're at 6 minutes 30 seconds, will we get like a tap or anything by the judge to like warn us that we're almost at the end of our time, or do we
Yes.
have to keep a clock with us?
And since you're in like 11th, 12th grader, I'm going to be assuming like a little brain cell here. So you can maybe just use a stopwatch and time yourself. Great. Yes, I'm just going to be covering like leader of opposition. Then I'm going to be covering up all your doubts, and then we will go slowly and steadily. Leader of opposition has the same format. Like you will have to define, you will have to characterize, you will have to frame, you will have to present your arguments, just rebut, and then impact it. But one more thing which is crucial is a leader of opposition has already heard prime minister. Prime minister is somebody who gives out a speech, and a leader of opposition has heard it already, which means before doing anything, just try to respond to the prime minister. Your responses should be either you accept or reject their definition. So oftentimes, again, the shoot example, right? So let's say the leader of opposition does not accept the definition that government had about shooting. So they can just definitional challenge. Definitional challenges, I don't agree with the definition that proposition has proposed. Maybe let's give out a more reasonable definition. In my entire debating journey, it has only happened once. It's like a point of there's something in MUN where you only do it like very, very rarely. So yeah, that's that point, which means you only have to do it rarely. You can't just challenge every other definition which your proposition has like said it, because oftentimes proposition is also very like very cognizant of never messing things up, because if they mess things up, they're losing the round, and if they don't mess things up, everything is going smoothly. So yes, always accept the definition, and if you think the definition is like really terrible, you can provide a counter definition or a counter framework. This is something that somebody asked, and that was a good question, which means you can always counter frame something. So let's say the framework is about animal rights, maybe you can frame about unemployment and why people will lose jobs if they ban zoos. Second is you have to clearly explain any kind of changes that you've done to the definition, any kind of changes that you've probably done into your framework, and try to justify it a little bit. Then you can rebut your prime minister, directly counter the arguments and provide like counter arguments if you have any. Second, you have to track a lot. What is tracking? And this is a word that I really, really love in debating. Tracking. Tracking is just like listening but actively. This looks like whatever your prime minister has said for a while, just finding out inconsistencies. And if you're really like listening to somebody in a very active manner, you can figure out what their inconsistency is and what the flaws in the prime minister would look like. And you will have to pinpoint their flaws, and you will have to weaponize those flaws. The next thing is you will have to present your case. Now frame it out, introduce whatever your case split is, and then you're good to go. Yes, this is what the strategy looks like. Yes, dumping matter, everything, like everything remains same. Just one more additional really involves. It looks like not preempting, but rather just rebutting somebody. So you don't have to preempt.
Can
I
you
mean,
like can you explain preempting again?
okay, yeah, preemption is predicting opposition or predicting your opponent. A prime minister can predict a leader of opposition. A leader of opposition can predict deputy prime minister, or can predict a little bit of arguments that maybe like a second speaker from proposition might come up with. So preemption is prediction. Basically, just what do you think they will say? And if you think whatever they are saying is correct, maybe you try to present counter arguments. So they're already like in a stage where they are arming themselves. Does this help, Prabjo?
Yeah, and like whenever if somebody says something, like can we like do we have to like find the arguments on our own? Like in MUNs, we are allowed to use our laptops or to search for any like for any information, not using AI of course, but any information on the I would say browsers. So are we allowed to do that in this?
No, internet research is not allowed at all, and you will have to think arguments on your own, which is why I think debating is a much more competitive platform than MUN.
Okay. And once again, can you explain dumping also once?
Yes, dumping is throwing matter. Like you dump garbage, you dump matter. Matter is arguments. So you will have to dump things. So ensure that you do not dump in a manner where people get overwhelmed. So dumping matter might look like only stating 3 arguments, only stating 2 arguments with reasoning. That's all. Great. Let me just cover this slide and then I will.
I had a question.
Yes, I would love if you just like stay mute for a while. I'll just cover this tips for first speakers and then I will go to the second, like I will go to your doubts. Great. Couple of things only, just 4 things. First, ensure that you're clear. I mean, oftentimes people have a lot of, let's say, enthusiasm for presenting arguments. They're like, hey, this is my 4 arguments, this is my 5 arguments, this is my 6 arguments. But it's not about an argument versus argument game. It's about strategically winning that game. This looks like that whatever you are speaking, so it's not about jargons. In MUNs or in a lot of other formats, people just like spew jargons and they also spew treaties. I mean, it's fine insofar as you do it, but it's fine even if you say something which is so easy in a very simple word, because that is very compelling. So you need to ensure that you're well organized, you're easy to follow, and you're able to like signpost things. Let me just write down the meaning of this word. Signpost is like identifying what you have said. It's also like a heading of the argument. So in the conclusion of why do people conclude is because they want to ensure that people don't really forget my speech. So in conclusion, you can signpost. Signpost would look like judges and everybody in the audience. Today I've told you 3 things. First, second, third. That's signposting. Evidence and logic. Ensure that you're able to like coherently present your claims. Coherency might look like just logically explaining things. And this is one more thing that I'm trying to say. In 7-minute speeches, do not solve the world's biggest problems. In a 7-minute speech, people can't really solve the problems of climate change, patriarchy, sexism, masochism, things like that. So in a 7-minute speech, try to be proportional. This looks like if your problem is climate change, give a solution which solves climate change. And if your problem is, let's say, like dog rights, maybe try to give like solutions which cover dog rights, things like that. So try to be proportional with what you are trying to say and how much you are trying to solve and maybe figure out at the end of the day. Thirdly, engagement. Engagement looks like rebutting a lot. This game is about breaking the castles. And if you're able to break the castles, I think you're winning that game really like nicely. Flexibility. I think debaters have to be really, really adaptable and flexible, which means you need to adapt to whatever your opponent is saying. So sometimes your opponent might really be brusky. This looks like they're just saying anything, or they're just like trying to abuse your arguments, things like that. And it's a bad strategy. Oftentimes, be kind and compassionate, but be flexible. This looks like if your opponent has said something which you thought wasn't coming anyway, you can just adapt. Maybe you can run to a second argument, you can run to a third argument. Maybe you can cover that up. Maybe you can acknowledge what they're saying and then move on. So these are the things that you can possibly do. Be adaptable, adapt to your strategy, adapt to your team, adapt to your communication, and adapt to however circumstances you are within that team. These are the tips for first speakers. I want to open myself to questions. Yes, Aryan, and then I will take 2 people more.
Ma'am, I had a question. Ma'am, when will we get the topic for the debate? Will we get it in the place, or will we get it beforehand?
So I don't really know this because I'm a trainer. I haven't organized this entire competition. Maybe you can connect with any of the organizing committee members so that they can guide you on this.
Actually, on the first day, they told us that they'll give us 3 topics and we'll have to choose one of them and we'll get 25 minutes to prepare for it. And
Yeah,
then
okay.
we will create.
That's fine.
Then how will we research for it so fast?
You don't have to research she just told that debates are quite competitive. You cannot research there. You have to prepare for them at home. You can practice some topics or something.
Yes,
That's
thank you, Pranjot. That was the answer. Aditri?
Ma'am, can you please re-explain flexibility, like giving an example for that?
Can somebody explain flexibility here? Wait, I can't really see. Just a second. There's somebody. Oh yeah, Crowley. I'm just gonna call you Crowley because it's like a cool Discord thing.
Oh yeah, I want to say like the first speaker is supposed to be flexible or whatever, but let's just say they mess up, okay, because they got under pressure and they said a point that wasn't discussed with the team, and Is it a good idea for any of the next speakers to actually acknowledge that the first speaker messed up and fixing their own teammates' arguments? Or should we
Yeah, it's
try
fine.
to is it a good idea though? Because that
I
would
mean,
make
if you're
their
first
points
speaker,
negligible.
yeah, completed.
And
Okay,
no, because if you like kind of correct the argument of the first speaker, that means the first speaker didn't say a correct argument, so they wouldn't get points in the first place. So they would lose that round. So is it a good idea to mention it or just try to manipulate? Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good question because oftentimes this is the strategy called drop it. So oftentimes, let's assume the worst case. If your first speaker messed it up, what you can do as a second speaker is you can drop it, like drop that argument, extend on something else, and divulge the attention of the judge and the audience towards something that's more relevant. So you can drop it. Does this help?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, anyone else? No one else? Okay. Let me just go to the second speakers then. Since we're running out of time, I will cover second speakers today. Yes, somebody raised their hand.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I just wanted to know, I didn't attend the third session of the day, of this camp. So, will you explain the rebuttals, in this presentation?
Does anyone here want to explain, Prachit, what a rebuttal is? Rebuttal is a response you give it to your opponent. My opposition, so my opponent said this. I would like to respond to by saying that my point is much more better than theirs. That's the way most of the responses actually work. But the floor is open to explaining what a rebuttal is. Okay, yes, Deeksha.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, when are we supposed to raise POIs and how do we do it?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, Prajit, does that answer your question about rebuttals? Rebuttals is a response that you give it to your opponent.
Okay, ma'am, I got it.
Okay. And you already have like so many other mentors. Maybe you can connect with like other mentors in the group as well to just like help you understand something which is probably there. And yeah, they might be readily available. You can also connect with me if you want. Great. Let's go to the question that some of you asked about POIs. So in 7 minutes, the first 60 seconds and the last 60 seconds is called protected, which means in the first 60 seconds, you can't ask a POI. Similarly, you can't ask a POI in the last 60 seconds. So you have to ask a POI within like the first minute to the 6th minute. And this is the period, like the first 6 minutes is something that you have to ask a POI in. How do you ask a POI? There are two methods or modes, online and offline. In offline, you can just raise your hand or you can vocalize POI. And if the person acknowledges you, great. If the person doesn't acknowledges you, that's fine. You just move on with your life. Online, you can just raise your hand, use the feature that's there in Google Meet. It's underutilized. And then, oh, Jesus. A POI is a point of information. It's a question. It's a question, a short comment, or like a short critical comment that you want to make. So let's say a person is speaking for 7 minutes, and suddenly a person from opponent says POI, and this person has to accept it. They can also reject it, depends on them. And while they're accepting it, this person poses a 15-second question, and they will have to answer it, and that's it. They can then continue with their speech. So a POI is a point of information, a short remark, or a question that you have to ask. Yes, absolutely, Aryan. And yes, that's the way in which you ask a POI. Does that help you answer your question?
Ma'am, so
Yeah,
we have to answer the POI within the time span that is the 7 minute itself, or we get extra time.
Yes. No, you don't get extra time. You have to answer and manage time within that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, Purna, you can ask the question. Never mind. Okay, great. Virat, then Kredi, then Varandeep.
Yeah, ma'am. So in between our speeches, our opponent can raise their hands, and then if we want, we can reply to their points. Is that what you were saying, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can also reject it. Depends on
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
you. Yes, next person.
What if what if you reject the POI and then the other person just spams it right back at you? Like, no, I wanna ask. So like, can they just keep doing it
Oh,
till you reject?
oh yeah, that's a good question. Clarification again. That isn't allowed. So let's say if you reject a POI, they have to wait for 30 seconds at least to then continue asking a POI. So if they don't accept it again, they have to wait another 30 seconds. And by that time, if they keep rejecting it, they will be tired and the time is up. That's
Oh,
it.
thank you.
Warandeep.
Yeah, ma'am. I wanted to ask how many POIs can we generally ask in a speech?
You can ask as many as you can, but you have to be cognizant about protected minute. You can't really ask a POI in that protected minute, but you can ask as many as you can, but do not badger or heckle somebody. Badgering or heckling somebody is just like continuously asking a POI even when they have rejected it. And how many POIs you can answer? At least two. That's it.
But like, I wanted to ask one more thing. Like, what if they continue reject, like they reject every POI, and that's like,
That's their mistake.
so this you get extra points for answering a POI.
No, you don't get extra points. But it so there's something called win and there's something called individual speakers. So if you answer a POI, so if you don't take a POI, your speaker points might be like out of 10, like 7. But if you answer a POI, if you take multiple POIs, it might be like 8. That's it. It doesn't affect you if you win or if
If
you
we,
lose.
like,
You have
is there any limit to answer the POI if we keep on getting them? So if we like, is there a limit that you can only answer these many?
no, there is no limit. It depends on your capacity.
Can we
Ishan,
announce at the beginning of our speech that I will not be taking any POIs?
that isn't allowed. I mean, you shouldn't be in the game if you say that. Ishanvi.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a POI. Basically, we like while the speech is going on, we have to like raise our hand, interrupt them, and then ask the POI, right?
Yes, you can raise your hand and you don't have to interrupt. So oftentimes people just say, I will be taking my POI while raising hand, or you can write it in the chat box. And they obviously specify the way that they want to take the POI. They can either raise their hand, they can either just like just say that maybe just put your POIs in the chat box, and that really helps. But you
All
don't
right.
have to.
Okay.
Yes. Great. Let's go to second speakers. Since we're running, we had just have 15 minutes. So I'm just going to be covering like a little bit of second speakers, and then we can just have a doubt clearing session as well. That might really help. Great. Second speakers have a couple of responsibilities that they have to do. They're like a person who helps the first speaker just stay intact. And they're also people who determine whether you're winning or losing the debate. Again, one more strategic thing. If you are a second speaker, and if you are sure that you're winning in your second speech, that proves that you're a strong team. But if, let's say, you're in a debate where you're losing the second speech, that might be like an indication where the third speaker has to wake up. It's a wake up call. So, yes, that is what predominantly a strategic thing might look like. You have a couple of responsibilities. First, you need to be really impactful, which means you need to explain the effect and the outcome of your argument. Oftentimes, it's a debate where you are trying to destroy the castle or you're trying to topple down the claims. Your opponent might really like brush your, let's say, whatever you are saying. So the first thing that you will have to do is rebuild. Rebuilding might look like whatever my first speaker said, it's not really irrelevant as my opposition claims. It's something which is of grave importance because it has impacts. So you will have to rebuild your argument and you will have to reconstruct your arguments. Then you have to clearly show your impacts. Like, this is the significance of this argument, and this is the way in which you evaluate what your opponent might say, etc. The second thing is you have to be really aware and you have to be vigilant, which means you have to be extremely vigilant on this, which means you can't just ignore whatever your opponent is saying. If you ignore it, you might not have a compelling speech. What do I mean by a compelling speech? Which means oftentimes judges have questions in their heads and they're looking for answers within that team. Which means if you're able to answer the question of the judge, like obviously you don't have like senses where you're trying to figure out what the judge is trying to like think about, but oftentimes there are questions that audiences have. Can you have it? So if yeah, I would love if you just like do raise your hand, and then I'll come to your question. I've promised that. Second is just let's say your judges possi- possibly are like thinking of this and they're looking for that answer, and if you're able to like convince them of this answer that they had a question of, I think you're winning that. So yes, always try to critically analyze what the impact of opponent looks like and what is something that they are losing out, and you always have to be really critical of what they are coming from and how they are coming for it. Yes, one more thing I will cover up and then we can take up questions. It's called extensions. This is a very famous question. Do the second speaker give out two, three arguments, or do the first speaker give out two, three arguments? The first speaker can dump matter, which means they can give out two, three arguments. The second speaker can extend. Extension looks like whatever my first speaker has left, let me continue from that, or let me just give out more analysis or give out more reasoning. So let's say if my first speaker just said, oh, India is a developing country, but did not answer why it is a developing country. I mean, what is the reason or what is the cause of India becoming a developing country? An extension speaker, which means a second speaker, can just be like, India is a developing country, as my first speaker said, because of five reasons. One, lack of infrastructure, lack of education, lack of equity, resource distribution is bad, and they don't have enough government budget funding. So all of these five reasons led you to say that India is a developing country. So what did you do? You build on the team case, you maintain coherence, you also provided depth, which means you provided a little bit of nuance. What is a nuance? A nuance is providing more reason to an existing thing. One more thing, in a debate, not every argument is complete. Like you will never have an argument which is complete. Like you will have to do so much work till your deathbed to make an argument complete, because knowledge is so vast, which means your depth, which means the way in which you're providing like more reasoning or more arguments to an existing claim becomes much more deeper. And then it helps you to be adaptable. What do I mean by adaptable? Is you can just ensure that you can be like a little bit vigilant, you can have careful listening, you can shift the debate dynamic. And this is a very long conversation on this as well. Let's say if the debate is not in your favor and you've recognized it, what you can do is you can turn it in your favor. That's being adaptable. And how can you turn it into your favor? Carefully respond to whatever your opponent is saying, and then keep adding depth, keep adding coherence, keep building something new. And what if that new really strings out to judges? And what if that new argument can really help you win that debate? And yes, that is how you can be adaptable. This is my end of the second speakers. Now I will open myself to questions. Yes, Ishan B.
Yeah, okay. So the second speaker's speech mainly just consists of countering the POIs and extension of what the PM said. It doesn't really have that individuality in its speech, right?
I mean, it does. I spent like the last 7 minutes explaining that. That's called extensions. You
Yeah,
can
but
extend your first speaker.
yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm saying now. So it's countering POI is an extension of whatever PM said, not the different points as the PM what PM said.
So extension can also be one extending on your first speaker. It can also look like introducing something different. So it helps you preserve that individuality, because the second speaker is not repeating something that your first speaker has already said. That is something that's not advisable at all. But as a second speaker, you can introduce a whole new different argument, which is different from your first speaker. That helps you preserve individuality.
All right. Okay.
Okay, Varandeep.
Yes, ma'am, I want to ask if in an extension, if the second speaker is giving an extension, like basically, those points have to be like directly linked to the arguments given by the first speaker, or could they be like uh, their own new arguments, and they could just explain their own arguments in the
It can be both. It can be something which is linking the first speaker. It can also be something which is independent. None of it is something that's harmful. Okay, Aryan.
Ma'am, I had a question. Ma'am, who will be deciding who will be the first speaker, the second speaker, and the third speaker? Will it be the team members or will it be the committee?
Your own team.
Okay, thank you.
Prabjot.
Yeah. So you just like two slides before you told us that we had to like answer the we are like it's not important to answer the POIs and everything, and if we do not answer them, it does not count in negative marking. However, if we talk about rebuttals, if rebuttals come to us during our speech or something, so like is it necessary that we need to answer them?
Okay, so both of the questions are mutually exclusive. I think one question leads to the other. The clarification first, I think you need to answer a POI. I think POIs are extremely important for increasing your own individual scores. And if you can have like a mid individual score, that depends on you. But the second question is, if you have a rebuttal on you, you will have to address the rebuttal, because if you don't address the rebuttal, the point of opponent stands better. So you will have to counter it.
Like, is there any suggestion that if somebody gives a rebuttal and we are having a hard time to like find a solution to it, so like is there any suggestion how we can look at its perspective and how to like more like use our brain and like do something?
So one thing is, maybe you can think of alternatives. So it comes with a lot of practice. It is very contextual. This question is, I don't know what motion are you specifically talking about. It's a very generic idea of what if I'm stuck. I mean, this can happen with so many other debaters. This happened with like myself, and this happened with your own mentors as well. And this can happen with like literally anyone who's starting in debating. And for this to overcome, it takes over a period of time where you have to go to multiple tournaments. You face this embarrassing situation, and then you like victoriously emerge from it. That's the only way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Prali.
Yeah, talking about individual score again. Uh, uh, I've done competitions in the past, and their newer points would lead to more individual score because you presented a new point. So if the second speaker is doing extensions, is it like a doom yourself but save your team kind of thing? Or is the point system in this competition different than others?
I really don't know which competition you went, but it was really wrong. Adriti.
Yes, ma'am. I had a doubt that the counter arguments are different from rebuttals. Like, are they?
Yes, it is. So a rebuttal is a direct response, and counter. So even rebuttals are of two types: competing and contradictory. And it's a very long session that I took for middle category. But yes, we will come to it when I have a different session with you, if possible. But counter arguments are if I have an argument, if I can present a different argument, that's a counter argument. A rebuttal is a direct response. It doesn't involve any arguments. It's a response that you give it to your opponent.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, but yeah, coming to your question, Credly, I think one, that was a flawed system, but secondarily, I think new points doesn't mean like more points, because you also have to prove the relevance of your points as well. This looks like, let's say, if my first speaker presented two arguments and if my second speaker provided a new argument, it depends on which speaker was able to prove that compellingly. But secondarily, which speaker was more persuasive, proving that claim, proving that impact, or proving like what is the end goal or what is the solvency of that argument. If any of the speakers did it better, they would get more points, as opposed to, let's say, one person introducing new argument getting more points. That doesn't possibly happen, and it's a very biased system where one person just introducing a new argument would get like a more marks. It's just sad. Any other questions? Oh, do you have any other question, Krelly?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, great. This also makes me come to the end of the session as well. It's 10:27, And if you have any other questions, I am like really, really honored to take this. But somebody asked me about reply speakers, and I will answer that before going out. So, reply speakers, so the name itself, if you hear it's a reply speaker will never give a reply. They never respond to the opponent. Their job is just to summarize. It's a 4-minute speech where you just have to summarize what your team was able to contribute. What is the difference between a reply speaker and a whip speaker? A whip speaker weighs. What is a weighing machine? A weighing machine really gives you an idea of which argument has more weight and which argument was able to solve something. So they have to weigh, they have to respond, they have to bring more reasoning to an existing claim. They can't really bring a new material altogether, but they can bring reasonings to an existing claim just to push for it more. And yeah, these are the couple of responsibilities that whip speakers have. However, a reply speaker never gives a reply, they just summarize the contributions that your team had. That's it. It's like a cover up thing, which is why Asian parliamentary debating is a little bit of a boring format where you have to give so many speeches just to prove you are better. But yeah, a reply speaker is just like a summary speech where you just conclude the speech directly. It's one more opportunity to prove that you're winning, or let's say trying to cover up. Does this help answer the reply speaker question? Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm very happy to address them.
Excuse me, mom.
Yes.
Mom, will you share this PPT on the group?
So I think this is IP. So I will share my email ID. If you really want this IP, you can email me and I will share it.
Okay, mom. So, yeah, I think that's. Excuse me, mom. Sorry to interrupt again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to like clarify the format of the debate. Like first prime minister, then the second speaker, then the third speaker, and then there are POIs, and then the opposition party replies, and yeah, that's it, right? I just wanted to confirm.
So I think I would really recommend if you can go through the format of the like debate once again. But just for like a reiteration, the format of this entire debate looks like Prime Minister speaking first, then Leader of Opposition, then Deputy Prime Minister, then Deputy Leader of Opposition, then Government Whip, then Opposition Whip, then Opposition reply, then Government reply. The first 6 speakers, which means from Prime Minister to Opposition Whip, it's a 7-minute 15-second speech where 15 seconds is just for wrapping up, and the reply speakers are for 4 minutes where you just conclude and prove the contributions that you had on your team. That's the format of Asian parliament.
Okay, mom. Mom, the reply speakers are basically from our team only, right?
Yes, reply. Oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to clarify. A reply speaker cannot be a whip speaker, which means a whip speaker cannot give a reply speaker consecutively, which means in your team you have to nominate who will be the reply speaker. Will it be the first speaker? Will it be the second speaker? So you have to nominate yourself like within.
Can you like explain whip speaker?
Whip speaker is a speaker who sort of summarizes everything, gives a response, and they are the most strategic speaker because they have to make you win the debate, or yeah, they just like really ensure that the team is able to come together. So I think it's a 1 hour session again, but yep, that's what I'm able to say. It's they're the people who weigh things out. It's a The whip speakers are also responsible for proving which side has long-term benefits, which side has worst case, which side has best case, which side has short-term benefits, which side has more number of benefits, which side has more proportionality of benefits, things like that. Ishanvi?
Could you share your email with us, please?
Yes,
That
I will share that in the group. Somebody from the team will share it on the group.
thank you.
Rajit.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask if our opposition asked a POI, so will we reply them on the spot, or we'll reply them in a reply speech?
You reply on the spot. Just like I said it, a reply speaker is not responsible for giving a reply. They don't reply. They do everything else other than reply.
Okay, ma'am.
Great. Thank you so much.
So, like reply speaker basically just summarizes the whatever the entire team said, right?
Yes.
And for how much? For how long do they speak?
4 minutes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I had fun. So had you. Bye bye.
Bye,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful session. All right, guys, you all can leave the call now.